Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Learn how Sencha Open Tooling can help you build better apps faster. My name is Mark Cusmano. I am a sales engineer at Sencha, and we're going to do about 15 or 20 minutes of describing what Open Tooling is, give you a demo, have you understand the context of why it exists, how it exists with our other tools, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. If you have questions, please go ahead and type them into the GoToWebinar questions area. One last reminder, we will record this, so if you want to go back and review or have other colleagues that would like to see it, it will be available shortly after we start or after we save it. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about Open Tooling and also how it relates to something else you may have heard of called XGen. I'll explain kind of all the verbiage and all the tooling. We'll look at where you can get documentation on this tool, and then how to install it, how you use XGen to generate an EXTJS application. All of this will kind of culminate in a demonstration where I'll use XGen to generate an app, and then I'll focus on some of the unique features which differentiate it from the other tools you can use to generate EXTJS applications. So, Open Tooling and XGen. Open Tooling was introduced in 2018 with EXTJS version 6.6. It was introduced as Open Tooling. So, if you went back to look at the 6.6 guide, you would see a getting started with EXTJS Open Tooling. If you look at that same getting started for the latest version, which is 7.7, you'll notice there's no getting started with Open Tooling. It actually says getting started with NPM. And we also talk about XGen. So what does that all mean? Well, Open Tooling was the marketing name. It kind of stuck a little bit, but it's not really prominent anymore. XGen is the actual tool I'm going to demonstrate to you, which is actually an NPM environment for EXTJS. So if I say Open Tooling, I could just as easily say XGen. I could say it's the NPM environment for XJS, all the same. I'll probably mostly say XGen. So don't get confused. We're really talking about the same thing with three of those. So, okay, it's called XGen. What is it? One thing you can think of XGen as is an extension, kind of a quote unquote extension of Sencha command. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've done work with Sencha command, you know it's a command line tool to generate an app, to run an app during development, to build a production version of an app. Sencha command still exists. XGen is built on top of and uses or utilizes Sencha command, but it adds the ability to do NPM things, which some people think stands for Node Package Manager, but it doesn't stand for anything apparently. It's just NPM. NPM is the JavaScript packaging technology available to the ecosystem. So we now can build and use the tooling for NPM packages. We use a bundler called Webpack to build things. We can go to the NPM repository and find useful utilities that we can add to our EXTJS application. So we've added this layer of modern or open tooling on top of Sencha command. Other things that XGen has done is kind of cleaned up and refined the process that Sencha command started. For example, with Sencha command, you can have custom templates. You can have a generated app that's custom to your environment. Not a lot of people know how to do that, so we've made it easier to use. As a matter of fact, you can have a custom template that's in a Git repository, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And as I mentioned, you can use XGen you can use NPM packages to enhance your EXTJS application. Again, I will show you that. It all starts out with the Getting Started guide. Again, this is the Open Tooling one. This is the one from today. So you've got two avenues to get started with EXTJS. The Getting Started with Zip is essentially getting started with the Sencha command environment directly. Getting started with NPM is using XGen. So you can see one of the first things I do is an NPM install. So we're going to go through and discuss that. So the documentation is in the EXTJS Getting Started Guide, the first thing under the guides, getting started with NPM. So as it mentions, you install XGen from NPM. There's two versions of NPM. There's a trial version of NPM that's on the public NPM repository. That's this page here. I'm on npmjs.com, and I did a search for @Sencha XGen. So you can see it here. And we have one for 7.7. Like any other NPM product, you can do an NPM install, the I stands for install, and then install XGen. You can install it globally, which I have already done on my machine, using a G as well, and then XGen will be installed globally. I'm not going to go through that because I've already done it, but if I went over and went to my terminal window and typed XGen after I installed it, I will know it's installed because it actually runs and shows this welcome page with a quick start, some examples, so you know that you're ready to go. One little tip is you can also just type ext, and it'll also run XGen. And we're going to look at some of these examples in a bit here. So you have XGen installed. You've installed it from the public NPM environment. The documentation talks about how to get a licensed version. So there's two sections here. If you're a trial customer, you get the 30-day trial. If you're an active customer, you need to log into our private Sencha NPM repository, which is right down here. That's the login. Once you log in, what it basically does is it says anything that's scoped to @Sencha will go to our private repo. So when you're going to get @Sencha XGen, it'll go to our private repo. All of the other packages that we have out there for EXTJS are also @Sencha, and you'll see that in a moment. Next thing you might want to do is generate an application. So there are various ways you can generate an application. I can refer to help to see what all those ways are. So XGen with help is probably a good place to start. It'll give you like all these options here. You can run XGen in interactive mode. So if you type XGen I, it'll run it in interactive mode and it'll ask you questions. So if I go back to the slides here, and I take this XGen app, an XGen app, and then a -I. We'll go ahead and just do that really quickly here. XGen app -I, EXTGen app -I will run an interactive version of XGen. So it'll ask you questions. Now, do you want to see the defaults that we're going to generate for package.json? I'll say yes. You see all the defaults. Would you like to create a package.json? Yes, I would. Would you like to name your EXTJS app? Here's the default. You just hit enter, it'll use that. Would you like to select a template? There's templates available that you can pick. I'll pick just one of these. I'm not going to generate this. I'm going to show you the other way. So this is going to now generate with your selected interactive configs. I'm going to control break out of it, and I'm going to do the non-interactive version of this, which is something like this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and bring this into my command line, and I'll explain the pieces of it. Let me clear out my area here. So I'm going to do XGen, generate an app. I'm going to do not an interactive, so A, automatic. The template I want to use is the classic template. The name I want to give my application is my XGen app. I'll say my XGen app 2, just in case I have one out there. I'll hit enter. Now, there are long names to all of these. I could have said template dash or dash dash template in the name, or I like to use the shorthand versions of it. But you can see it picked all of the things I want, and it starts to actually run. What it's doing right now is it's creating my NPM environment in a folder. The folder is the same name as the app. The app will get a package.json populated, and an NPM install will be done on the application. So by the time this is finished, I have everything that I need to run an application and to get ready to work. So if I do a quick search here, you can see here's my new XGen app 2. I'm going to go back to one I've already generated and take a look at it. It's called XGen App Demo, just to make sure that the demo gods work for me and nothing goes wrong. And I'm going to bring this up in Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is my preferred code editor, but it could be any editor that you might want to use. So here is the end resultant application. The only thing that's different with this app and the one that I just ran is the name. So if I look in the app.json, you can see the name here. If I go through the file structure, it's pretty much the same. The things that are different and make XGen NPM capable are this package.json. So the package.json is an NPM packager. So you can see here it has a scripts tag, and then down here it has all of the NPM packages that I'm using in this application. So notice I have an NPM Webpack plugin, Sencha one. I have some not related to Sencha packages. You can see Webpack here. You can see Babel here. I actually have Lodash, and I'll show you that in a minute here, but this is a normal NPM project. So a normal NPM project has a node modules folder. And in the node modules folder are all of the downloaded packages from the NPM install. Notice among all the other packages, there are NPM packages under the @Sencha folder that represent the framework. So the framework is being delivered to this NPM project through packages that are on the public NPM environment. That's where all of these came from. Unlike what I do with a Sencha command-based application where I say Sencha app watch, in a package-based application for NPM, I typically do an NPM start, which in this case will do an NPM run dev desktop, which is this line right here, which invokes Webpack. But all I need to do is NPM start. So that, just like any other NPM project, will start the build. Notice that the things that are coming in the command line here are very similar to what you would see with Sencha command. That's because Sencha command is running under the covers. But we are using the NPM commands to make everything work. So Sencha command is running, Sencha command is running. It'll eventually get to awaiting for changes. And check that. The app automatically knows to start a browser, and that browser window is attached to this particular project. I'm going to kind of give myself some screen real estate here, and I'm going to log in here because this is a template that has a login page, and there's the starter page. It's got a couple of tabs or menus on the side here. It's got buttons you can click on. Typical EXTJS application. This particular panel has a grid. So let's do a little bit of work here. Let's find the home page, which is under the app folder, app desktop source view. Here's the home view right here. And let's make a change. So you can see here the word clone is sitting here. I'm going to change that to something. In my Visual Studio Code, I have autosave on. So as soon as I type, this is going to save and watch the browser. MJG, save, automatic reload. So the facilities that we've gotten from some of the newer technologies of open tooling are now available to you as a Sencha EXTJS program. So I can, if I have bigger screens here, I can have them on separate screens. I can constantly see the changes I'm making just by changing what's over here. And under the covers, as I said, it really is Sencha command running and a Sencha app watch running, although now you have a much more simplified interface that is analogous to anything else you would do with NPM, NPM start. All right, so that is a generated EXTJS application, and you saw me do a quick demo of XGen. Now I want to spend a few minutes just talking about some of the additional new features that are available if you use XGen to complement to Sencha Command instead of just Sencha Command. The first one, which I think is a pretty significant one, is you can use a custom template. You can use custom templates with Sencha Command, but the custom template can be from a simple Git repository. So I have an example here on my own Git repository, which is called Classic Desktop. If I go over to the browser window and open up this Git repository, you'll notice that it is a simple template application. What do I mean by template application? Well, you see these files here that are probably familiar to you as an ext.js developer, but app.js has a .tpl.default. And if I open it up, it's got some template replacement variables in here. So the templates in XGen use the X template functionality of ext.js. So if you've ever built templates for columns or some sort of template to, do anything dynamic within ext.js, the same templating functions are used here, except this is a template of an entire application. So I called this the classic desktop template. And now if I run an XGen app using the R keyword, which is for repository, I name the repository. The B keyword is the branch. I'm on the main branch. Everything else is the same. This will actually generate an application out of that custom template. And that custom template can do whatever you want. For example, you saw this application have a login screen when I first came to it. That's because I generated that application from a template where I added a login screen. And that login screen automatically comes into the template because my template said to create a viewport login folder, and this view, which is the login view, is that login screen. So you can do whatever you want. You can customize what gets generated. You can customize the starter app. Everything is done through your own custom template. Next thing I've already talked about auto reloading of the browser, which I think is a nice feature, just to not have to go back and forth and remember to restart the browser. It happens after an edit and a save. So once you save, you'll get a new version in your browser. The last major area I want to just focus on is the use of NPM packages. This is really where some of the power of XGen comes in. So because I'm running as a node package manager project, I can add packages that have nothing to do with ext.js. So if I come over back to my project here and I go look at my package.json, we close some of this up here, you'll notice that one of the packages I have here is Lodash. Lodash is a great utility to do things like finding things in strings. It's got a lot of utilitarian function. So I brought Lodash find functionality into my project. You'll also notice that unlike a regular ext.js application, my project has an index.js. That's the starting point for the NPM application. And what I'm doing here is I am requiring Lodash, which is JavaScript functionality, and assigning it to a global variable called find. So there's always an ext variable. That's the essence of ext. And I'm putting an underscore find keyword out there to say, okay, Lodash goes here. So now anywhere in my code, if I do a find on underscore find, I'll see that I'm using the underscore find functionality in a button click event to find some number in a set of numbers. So just an arbitrary thing that I put in here just to show you that I could actually call this Lodash functionality, and I output the result. So that particular functionality happens to be under this button right here. So if I click this Lodash button, you can see in the browser window that it's finding the number 13. What I really wanted to show you is that I was indeed able to interact with and use any sort of functionality in NPM within my ext.js application. So that's the high-level view of what XGen is. It's really easy to obtain it, really easy to get started. As I said, the trial is simply installing XGen. Everything else will be installed for you. You'll have this as a reference, this particular recording as a reference. And with that, we're about 10 minutes away from the end. I want to see and defer to my colleagues on the call to see if we have any questions. If you do have questions, please type them in, and we can answer those questions at this point. So any questions out there, guys?
Thanks, Mark, for the wonderful presentation.
Sure.
My name is Raj for you. I'm a marketing manager at Sencha. So we do have one question here so far. Where I can find the documentation for Open Tooling?
Where do I find the documentation for Open Tooling?
Yep, that's correct.
The documentation itself is in two places. The getting started, as I mentioned, is in the EXT77 documentation under the getting started with NPM. The -- help is documentation for the commands that are in XGen. I don't believe we have a specific documentation item for XGen itself. So if I come down here to docs.sencha.com, we don't have anything specifically for XGen. So those are going to be your two places to go to utilize the XGen functionality.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. Seems like we have no questions for the day here.
All right. So as I said, the easiest way to get started is to come to the Sencha documentation, go over to the EXTJS Getting Started tab, and determine if you're going to do this as a trial customer or as an active customer. The only difference is, as an active customer, you will have been given a user ID and a password when you purchase your license. That user ID and password will be requested when you run this NPM login. So let me just really quickly show you what you do here. There is one additional prerequisite that I probably should mention. If you've never used NPM before, you probably will not have NPM on your machine. So if you do an NPM command, you should see NPM's documentation. If you don't, if you never even installed NPM in your environment, you're going to want to go to node.js. And node.js is where NPM gets installed. That's because Node, which is a server-side or a command line version of JavaScript, includes with the install NPM. So you'll install Node, NPM will be installed. You'll know you have it if, when you come to the command line, you just type NPM, just like I did. Once you have that, the NPM login will ask you for user ID and password. From there on out, anytime you ask for anything that's scoped at Sencha, you will then be redirected to npm.sencha.com. So all of the executables, all of the SDK, everything you'll need in an watermarked version will be available to you in the private NPM repo. But to get started, very simple. Just go over to NPM, look for XGen, copy this command, paste it into your command line, and it'll install. So hopefully that gives you a good start. If you do have additional questions or you want to talk further with me, just leave me an email and I'd be happy to answer or interact with you on those questions. A couple of other things just to point out. If you want to get the entire trial of EXTJS, you can go through XGen, but you can also download an entire trial with all of our toolings, things like Sencha Sencha Architect, Sencha Themer, our IDE plugins, the Sencha Test product. We have a full suite of tools. Just head over to sencha.com and click on the buy now or trial link, and you should be able to get access to it. Last thing I want to mention is that we've got a very good and robust set of discussions going on our Sencha Discord server. So the Discord server is categorized by different products, whether you're using the modern toolkit, the classic toolkit, XGen, the plugins, whatever it may be. That is really the place to go for questions, and perhaps you can answer a few of the questions. A lot of our MVPs hang out there, so please join our Discord server. If you need information on specifically how to join the Discord server, either send me an email or talk to your sales rep. We'd be happy to get you set up. So that's all I have. And as I said, please get back to us with any questions. Send this to your colleagues, and we appreciate you guys spending the time with us on this webinar.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Once again, thank you for attending today's Skill Sprint series. We look forward to having you join us next time.
Bye-bye.